the broader implications are going to be felt by Africa's poor, because overseas development assistance in the form of aid is going to drop by no less than 1/5. That's also coupled by the fact that mergers and acquisitions and FDI activity has dropped by 75%. So what are the prospects for dealing with this perennial and pervasive problem in Africa? Poverty and poverty alleviation. We're now joined by Glenn Denning, who's the director of the MDG Center in Nairobi, Kenya. MDGs, of course, being Millennium Development Goals. And the question is, how strongly will they feature at a forum like this, where we're desperately trying to review capital markets and save the little bit of investment that Africa's been able to attract thus far?
Well, the MDGs and achieving the MDGs are extremely important for business, because no business is going to go into an area where people are hungry, where people are sick, where the kids aren't being educated, where there aren't roads, there isn't electricity. So we have to engage in public investment alongside business development.
Governments argue we're cash strapped. Donors argue we're in recession. We are definitely cash strapped. The figures show that from OECD countries, aid to Africa has dropped by 1/5 of total global aid. Where's the money going to come from?
Well, there are really only two places it can come from. It can come from governments, or it can come from donors. Ultimately, there has to be public investment. Now, right now, it's true that the funds aren't there, but the problems are actually greater than they were before the economic crisis. We have to invest, if it's possible, to save banks, to save motor companies, and to fight wars. It's possible to end poverty in Africa.
Now, there are 8 main Millennium Development Goals, but I think the one that features strongly for Africa is education. And education has been a recurring theme at this World Economic Forum. Is up until we do something about the brain drain, improving on skills, making access to education a priority, we can't even begin to talk development and broader investment in Africa.
Well, it's true, and probably education is the one MDG that has a reasonably good chance of being achieved over this period. But the education Millennium Development Goal is not all that ambitious. It's only about achieving primary school education. What we all need is much more than that. We want to help children move on to secondary school. We want higher education. We want greater literacy in the broader population. So a lot more needs to be done in education. But as I said, that's probably the most successful area of the MDGs right now.
An issue raised by the Secretary General of the International Red Cross alongside Salim Ahmed Salim, former OAU chairman, is food security. Is that also needs to come to the fore. And we know that last year Africa was the first victim or the casualty of food inflation, which saw riots all across the continent. We are a net exporter of food, and yet we have fertile land and many African countries like Kenya that are major exporters of agricultural products. What's the problem here?
Well, the problem is investment. It's as simple as that. It's true that it's both a challenge and an opportunity for Africa. Africa is the one region where there is the greatest malnutrition across the world. So what can be done about it? We can promote agricultural productivity, and that is all about investment. And actually, we've got some wonderful examples within Africa. Malawi is a great example. For 4 successive years, they've produced much more than they actually needed domestically. So if you invest in agriculture through smart subsidies, through irrigation, infrastructure, you can actually bring about a green revolution in Africa. It's entirely possible, but you need to invest.
Governance, the perennial theme, it's existed at every WEF conference and no less this year. People want to know, what are we going to do about recalcitrant African leaders who won't step down from power, or those who are democratically elected but start to treat the state as their personal fiefdoms? It raises the 8th Millennium Development Goal, which is the right to access to political accountability and human rights. Some people would say, you know what, those are lofty ideals at a time of increased poverty.
Well, we've made a lot of progress. It's easy to criticize the situation right now, but look back 15, 20 years. Nobody cared about rural areas. Why? Because you only need to look after the people around the palace, around the capital city. It's changed. Governments are way more accountable than they were. Obviously, it's not perfect democracies, but more and more governments are saying we need to address the needs of the masses, and the masses are actually still in the rural areas. So I think there's enough of positives coming out of this to believe that in the future there'll be much greater opportunities for people to achieve their full human rights.